Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Representative Eddie Rodriguez, and he is running for Senate District 14, the seat vacated by Kirk Watson. And since we have a new reality where we need to distance ourselves, I'm gonna be doing an online interview that you can watch, and then make a decision about who you'll be endorsing in the race. So, Eddie, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. Um, So I kind of think one of the cool things about the Young Democrats is we get a chance to get to know elected officials well at our meetings. So I kind of wanted this interview to be about who you are as a person more, to kind of recreate that for people. So I just want to start with some background. Where are you from, Eddie?
I'm originally from McAllen, Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley, and that was the first in my family to go to college. Went to St. Mary's University for a couple of years, and then it was just way too expensive. I really liked it there, but I had a lot of friends in Austin and going to UT, so I decided to transfer here to UT in 1991, and I fell in love with the city like most people who aren't from Austin, and I've been here ever since. So I've been here 29 years.
Yeah, that seems like a really common like Austin origin story is UT to never left.
Yeah, I'm married to an Austinite, but there are not very many of
Yeah. So where about in Austin do you live?
I live in Central East Austin. I've lived here since 1999. So if you know where Rainey Street is and all that, I'm
Mhm.
about 5 blocks or so east of the highway from there,
Okay.
just north of the river and south of Cesar Chavez. It's
Yeah,
in
so
the East Cesar Chavez neighborhood.
you're kind of in ground zero for the part of Austin that's changing rapidly.
It's done changed. It's already changed. I'll tell you. When I first moved here, I was one of many Latinos in this neighborhood, and there are fewer and fewer of us as time goes on, just because it was a really old community, meaning that there were a lot of senior citizens that lived here,
Mm.
and most of their kids had gone on to other places around all over Texas or all over the country. But yeah, it was kind of an aging community, and then as time wore on, maybe some of them would pass away, and then their kids couldn't afford to move back here even if they wanted to because of property taxes, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just changed pretty rapidly. It's getting younger though. I mean, you have a lot of younger people moving in,
Yeah,
which makes it
probably.
a little bit more things to do around here.
Yeah, probably wider, younger, and wealthier all at the same time.
I think that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the story for a lot of Austin.
yeah, that's true.
So, so you've been a representative, and you're looking at this move to be a state senator. So, why do you think that the state senator is an important role?
It's important. I mean, most House members want to kind of downplay the Senate just because there's a little bit of friendly competition between the two
Sure.
houses. But the truth of the matter is, you're one of 31 versus one of 150, which means you have more responsibility. You represent more people, and frankly, there's more opportunities to get things done because there are fewer of you to work together on stuff. Um, so senators tend to get things out of the Senate quicker and in the hands of the House. Some of the work that the work that the senators do tends to be a little broader and bigger in scope. So there's some advantages to being in the Senate, and I think for me, coming at this, obviously not for the paycheck. I think my last paycheck was $51 or something like that after taxes. It's about public service, and that's why I do this. I want to serve. I want to serve with a servant's heart, and this is an opportunity to represent more people and try to help more people in Central Texas.
So it's a little bit more of a leadership in the bicameral setup that we have.
A little bit more. I mean, when you think about like a senator might have several House members that are within his or her Senate district. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a, you can work with more House members because they're in your same uh,
Mhm.
district, so to speak. And in that regard, you can cross party lines. I mean, if you're still the senator that Republican House member might need to talk to and go to for something that he or she wants.
Okay. So what do you think makes a state senator successful? What kind of qualities does one need to have to be good at that job?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it is is being able to work across the aisle if you can. I mean, it's harder and harder to do as a Democrat, certainly in the Senate. In the
Mhm.
House, I've seen the ebbs and flows quite a bit. I first got in 2003 when I first got elected. 2002 is when I got elected. 2003 was my first session, and that happened to be the first session where we had a Republican speaker since Reconstruction, right? So I've never experienced the what it's like to have a Democratic majority in the House. So, but it varied from time to time. Sometimes we were down, 100 to 50 or 101 to 49 or whatever, to other sessions where there was only 2 votes difference between Republicans and Democrats. And even last session, after we picked up 12 seats, there was still a gap of 9. But what happens when you get closer to that parity is you're able to get more things done, and you can fend off some of the really, I think, more egregious bad stuff that some of the more conservative Republicans want to pass. Um, so in the Senate, that's really important that you have that ability to work when you can and to fight when you have to, but to really try to find coalitions. You can look at Kirk Watson's legacy, and he was able to get a lot of major things accomplished because he had those relationships. And he was able to broker, some kind of compromise to the benefit of the people of the Senate district. And I have those relationships. They're not. It's not like a buddy system. It's a mutual respect. Things and people that I've about half of the Senate I actually served with in the House, a Republican and Democrat, and I know all the senators being there for the last 18 years, and that those kind of relationships go a long way. Not to suggest that I'm going to get everything I want, but it's a really good starting point to get in there, have those relationships, those friendships, in some cases, to be able to find compromise for the people of your district.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned that. Because I think everyone I've talked to is a big fan of our exiting Senator Kirk Watson. That was sort of what they held him in regard for, is his ability to lead a project through, get buy-in across the aisle. So this is going to skip around a little bit in our list of questions, but what kind of projects would you see yourself bringing up and leading through the Senate if you were in this role?
Well, I think my priorities have shifted a little bit because of the pandemic, and
Mm.
certainly because of what's happening right now with the protests and the police brutality and police violence. But um, really, I think Medicaid expansion. There's an opportunity that I see right now because of the pandemic, and it's really revealed and highlighted a lot of our shortcomings as a state. Because this virus is not a Republican or Democratic virus, it's hit people all over the state, pretty much, whether they're high upper income to middle income to lower income, and it's hit people in Republican districts and Senate districts. So I think it's an opportunity to talk about some issues that may not have been, uh, you know, constructively discussed in the past. And I think Medicaid
Mm.
expansion is one of those things that we should be able to discuss in a meaningful way, or at least, or if our targeted Medicaid expansion or something of that kind. I think we need to really strengthen our social safety net. Uh, I think this has proven that out as well. Whether that's unemployment benefits for folks that might become unemployed. Uh, there were some waivers that the governor put in place that I think that we should consider making them permanent. Why do you have to have a 1 week waiting period before you receive those benefits? Why do you have to prove out that you're actively searching for a job in the time of a pandemic or in many other circumstances?
Mhm.
Most people want to work if they can work. We all know that. And so, we need to make things less punitive for our working families and working people here in Texas. I think we need to look at other things like the Children's Health Insurance Program. There's been some waivers that I think are in effect until the end of this month, waiving application fees, waiving co-pays and things like that. Similarly with SNAP benefits to feed women with
Mhm.
women and children, getting rid of some of those hurdles like the 6 month uh, uh, your income test that they would put every 6 months. I don't think there's a reason to continue doing that anyway. So I think I want to have those kind of conversations. That these are things that were highlighted because of the pandemic, and we need to look at them in a serious way. And certainly, criminal justice reform has been a priority of mine and will continue to be so, but especially now.
Yeah, so we have a social safety net, but there are a lot of barriers preventing people from taking advantage of it, or trying to shuffle people off of it as quickly as possible. And
Right.
you think those are things that we could accomplish?
I think these are things that we can discuss in a meaningful way. I think we can highlight, point to on the ground, real life, what happened with our constituents, and I think you're going to find that you'll find common stories amongst Republicans and Democrats. I mean, I know that for me, I'll just say this, and then we can move on to the next question. Is, I volunteered a couple of times to hand out food at the with Central Texas Food Bank, and there were a couple of people that told me that they have never ever had to wait in line for food, but they lost their job unexpectedly, and they were just like many of us, or just a paycheck away from needing some of these services. If something bad happens to you, a medical emergency, as the case is with pandemic, or any other circumstance with an economic downturn, and then all of a sudden you're out 2 months pay, and then you're virtually on the streets. And there are a lot of people, especially in Austin, that are in that situation.
Yeah, and that's sort of something that people always hold up as like proof of American exceptionalism, is that there are no bread lines. But with
Right.
things going
You saw
sideways
that there
for
really
just a
are.
few months, here they are.
Yeah, exactly right.
So I want to talk about your accomplishments in your role as a state representative. What have you accomplished that you're really proud of?
Well, I saw that question, so I just jotted a few things down through a litany of all these things that I've worked on. And I think there's successes that you can point to that I feel proud of, even though ultimately they weren't successful, like suing the state of Texas and the Republicans on redistricting, for example, in 2011, taking it all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court poured us out, but it was worth that struggle and that fight, and I'm proud of those things as well. But early in my career, I passed a bill with Senator Lucio that provided 700,000 more kids with a free breakfast by expanding the federal breakfast program here in the state of Texas. So that's something I'm extremely proud of. I'm also proud of expanding the dual credit. In other words, we had a cap of, don't quote me, I think it was 8 credit hours for high school students. It may have been a little bit more than that, but I just basically busted the cap, so you can have get as many college credit courses in as you can get in high school. That has led to a proliferation of early college high schools, and I think has really put a lot of our young people in a better position, either whether they're going to a 4-year institution or going straight to work afterwards. They may graduate with a certificate to be a plumber or to be an electrician or whatever the case may be, getting them ready for the workforce. So I think I'm really happy about that. I passed a wage, closed a loophole where this is predominantly in the construction industry, where you would have contractors that wouldn't pay their workers, and some of whom were undocumented, and basically wouldn't pay them after they worked for a couple of weeks, and they really didn't have much recourse, because the law was that if they paid, if the contractor then paid a smaller amount or half of it, that was enough, that there was no legal action. We closed that loophole, and since then I've tried to strengthen that by passing a retaliation bill in case these employers try to retaliate against the employees. I also passed the first homestead preservation district in the state of Texas, which really is an affordable housing tool to try to not stave off gentrification, but minimize the impact of gentrification in Austin. And I'm really happy and proud about that. And the Community First Village, which is where some homeless folks, or former homeless, are living in northeast Travis County. Kirk Watson and I passed legislation to make that possible. And then this past session, I passed a beer to go legislation, which allows for breweries, craft breweries or smaller breweries, to sell beer to go. And that may not seem like it's a changing of the world kind of thing, but for those folks, it really helped those small businesses. And I'm really proud to be able to do that. And in the manner that I was able to do that, which was to really get bipartisan support. There were plenty of Democrats that voted against that amendment. It ended up passing as an amendment. And I had plenty of Republicans that were against it, but there was the right combination of Republican and Democrats that just allowed it to pass by the skin of the teeth, but it passed. And then it went on to the governor's desk. And so I'm happy about that as well.
Well, yeah, and that's really there's been this proliferation of small local breweries, craft breweries. It's a whole industry, at least around here. It's been really growing, and that was one of their wish list items. So
It had been for a couple of sessions, and it was one of those. It was just the perfect timing, and I think I was able to get that across because of my relationships across the aisle. So
Really, really nice to hear about the prevention of wage theft too.
yeah,
There's so much stacked against working people in this country, and
absolutely.
even our president is really famous for doing that kind of stiffing
Right.
contractor
That's right.
technique. Before he was the president.
That's right.
Um, okay, so you already touched on it, and everybody's thinking about it. But I think what we're seeing is just America is done with police brutality, with abuse, with lack of consequences um, for the police, and I think the Overton window is really shifting, and we're seeing reform is not enough for a lot of people. They want defunding, demilitarization. Milwaukee is it looks like they are on track to disband their police. So what can we do at the state level that is serious and that is really looking potentially even beyond reform?
Yeah. Well, I think at the state level, we really need to look at some serious. We need to look at this very seriously. And right now that we have that window, right now, I think my concern is that between now and January, that things start to slow down. That's just it's very common and typical of may not support criminal justice reform. To time is their friend, right? And it's for us that we need to start talking about this now, even when we're not in session. So my priorities for criminal justice is we need to end the discretionary arrest of fine only offenses. So running a stop sign, that would be a ticket that doesn't lead to an arrest. And that was the Sandra Bland bill from last session that did not pass, but it took 7 tries to get it passed and to get some of it passed. It ended up as an amendment on another bill. Part of it did, and the governor vetoed that bill. That was just a hard fought kind of fight. So we'll go for that again, and I'm gonna happily support that. We need to end the hiring of officers who have been fired or resigned under investigation for police brutality or some kind of use of excessive force. We need to end that. If you have a record of that, you cannot get another job as a law enforcement officer. We need to report every stop, arrest, and use of force to a state database. Let's create a state database that has demographic information, because that's really important. We need to know the demographics of the people that are being stopped or arrested or are being have use of force on them. And then we need to release that to the public on a regular basis so the public knows what's going on. We need transparency with our law enforcement is basically what I'm saying. And we need to support local governments that do have independent review boards like Austin does. And we need to help them get more teeth so that they can actually do something. There's a lot of cities that have these independent review boards, but I think we need to do that, and at the same time encourage community policing, which is really important long term, to have police officers and law enforcement that are in the same beat, so to speak, for a significant period of time, so that they get to know that community and the community gets to know them, and they have a better working relationship. And then obviously we need to ban chokeholds and knee holds. That's something that we need to do at a state level. I know that Congress passed, or at least that the House passed yesterday or the day before, a bill that banned those 2 things. But in the event that doesn't pass, then we need to look at doing that at the state. But what I have worked on, which I think on the criminal justice side, is the decriminalization of marijuana. I've worked with my friend Joe Moody trying to get that passed. I think that would go a very, very long way. I did pass a bill that required community supervision for a first-time offender for possession of a small amount of substance, illegal substance. And we need to expand access to expunction of records, which is really important, because the criminal justice reform isn't just about excessive use of force by law enforcement. It's also about it's so ingrained in our society. If you have a felony conviction of some kind, your ability to get work, your ability to get housing is curtailed to a point where you're just in a constant state of poverty and in a constant state of not being able to get yourself out of that poverty. So we need to look at it very holistically.
And I think that's good if that's what you think that the state government could successfully pass. I think we should pass it. I think decriminalization is probably something that we should look at more options for. There's other victimless crimes that people are victimized for committing.
Right.
So, I'd encourage you to explore that as far as you can. Um,
Oh,
and
well, that's good.
I also wanted to talk about the pandemic. I think Texas is setting the bar in America for mishandling this or refusing to handle it, and America is setting the bar in the world. So, what can we do, in this next session to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Well, I think it is looking at the social safety net, like I said earlier, and we got
Right.
to look at strengthening that. I think that's one of the things. Now, hopefully, if you and I and everyone listening we're not going to, our children and our grandchildren will not experience something like this again. Hopefully, we'll. Uh, I don't want to see a pandemic every 5 years. Hopefully this is a very, very rare occurrence, but it did highlight some of the shortcomings of the state, and I think we just have to start looking we still have to start looking at things differently. I mean, we need to look at how we can really help our working families in times of crisis and in times of need. And I think that is looking at the social safety net, how we can expand Medicaid, how we can just ensure more people, make sure people have more access to healthcare on a regular basis, so that we're safe, because we need to save money at the local level too, right? Because if you're going to the doctor regularly, then you're not going to go to the emergency room because you're waiting too long, where you're so sick that you're just going to go to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things are what can help our working families. Honestly, I mean, I think that's what we have to look at, is the safety net, and then to try to ensure that economic prosperity, which will come again once the economy starts to recover here in Texas, how we can have that benefit everybody. The rising tide that can rise all boats, and I think we need to look at our policies on that and how we can ensure that people are getting fair wages. We need to look at paid sick leave is another thing that we need to look at as well at a state level, and prevailing wage, and all of those issues should be on the table.
So one other thing I wanted to ask about is that, and you mentioned this a little bit. A lot of times Democrats are playing defense. It's about what we can prevent. So I realize events have probably changed the dynamics that are going to play out in this next legislative session, but what do you see coming that's ugly, that needs to be vigorously opposed and prevented?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're coming upon a redistricting session, which is always ugly. Redistricting is always an ugly process, so we have to be prepared for that, to fight for fair and just representation and fair lines. I mean, being in Travis County, we've all kind of seen how Travis County has been chopped up into 5 congressional districts. Our House and Senate district, I mean, there are 5 senators in Travis County, I think, or 4. We're too big of a county, I think, for that as well. We need to probably streamline that so that it's a little bit fairer for the county. So that's going to be a big one. I think there's always, in times of crisis, there's always opportunity to find things to learn from it, and to find ways to improve in the event that a crisis happens again. But at the same time, there's other folks that look at that as opportunities to get more things that they want. And I've not been a strong supporter of charter schools, and nor will I ever be. I think there's need to look at and play a defensive role on the escalation of more charter schools. I think there's looking at this as an opportunity, perhaps online charter schools and charter school districts, and looking. I think there's some at the state level. I'm seeing with the commissioner, DEA commissioner, really wanting to promote and push an statewide online school district, which I think again is chipping away at our public school system and our public school education, at a time when our public schools are populated by people of color, or by children of color for the most part, and of lower socioeconomic status. And that's where we have to be investing our dollars, not defunding that. So I think we need to be careful and be on the lookout for that on the education front. And then, as always, I think a woman's right to choose is something that we always have to defend for. as long as there's a Republican majority in the Senate and in the House. We always have to be mindful of that.
And I have to put in a Young Democrats question. You know, we are now officially the biggest voting bloc in America. So what have you done for young people aside from Beer to Go?
um, I think my record is just has shown that I've really worked for this economic opportunity and fairness and equality throughout my career. And I think for young folks, I've tried to make it so that there is opportunity or access to higher paying work and higher paying jobs. Affordability is a big issue for all of us, but I think it hits people, younger people, a little bit harder as well. Trying to get work your way through the workforce here. Some people are really fortunate and they have the ability to go straight into a high paying job, and most of us aren't in that position. And so I've done throughout my time really try to provide as much economic opportunity as I can, not only for low income people, but for all people, them solidly in the middle class and the opportunity to go above that if they work hard and as long as the opportunities are there.
Yeah. You know, I really think you're onto something there. And I think that there's a way to tie um, keeping our community safe, protecting our environment, making sure that young people have good paying jobs, to tie them all together with, um, you know, community based jobs where we're working to better the place we live in, and that is our profession. I might just be speaking for myself, but I think a lot of young people would really love something like that.
Mhm. I
And
think
it's
there's
been
opportunity too, and I don't want to sorry to cut you off, but I think there's opportunity too. I think one of my priorities for next session is universal access to broadband internet. And most of us probably listening, obviously, have internet access, but there are a lot of folks that do not. And I think one of the changes we're going to see after this pandemic is that we now know that a lot of people who thought they could never work from home, and a lot of businesses that thought it was a terrible idea to have your employees work from home, that they were going to slack off a little bit. That's been proven for the most part to be wrong. And so I think there's opportunities for good paying jobs that are that it almost doesn't matter where you live, that you
Mhm.
can you can live just outside of Austin if you so choose, work 3 days a week from home, and then still be close enough to the city that on the weekend or whatever you can come to the city and enjoy the benefits in life there. It's just I think there's just a lot of different opportunities that are going to be opening up because of just out of necessity because of what we learned here. And I think you're going to find, I know that some of the employers that I've been talking to expect to have a chunk of their employees really working from home most of the time. And that's an interesting sets an interesting opportunity because now instead of instead of you having to or wanting to get an apartment or a house near where you work in central Austin, you may not have to do that as that may not be as necessary, frankly. And then you have the young people that live in rural communities and in low income communities. If they have the right training and they understand that job, they can have a good paying job living in Smithville, Texas, in Bastrop County, and be working for a big company, a tech company or whatever that might be here in Austin.
Right. And that ability to bring cost of living down could really open up opportunity for a lot of people to have
Agreed.
a good life. And I mean, ultimately, that's what we all want. That's why the pandemic's stressful. That's why pent up rage is spilling over, is because opportunity is not equal. And
Definitely not.
well, hey, I think this is the amount of time that you set aside for me. So thanks a lot for being here for this interview for the Young Democrats. We're gonna send this out to everybody shortly.
All
Um,
right.
and good luck on your race.
All right, Ryan, I appreciate the time. Thanks, guys.